Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Warrior, watching the empty space where Kepler 442b should have been sending signals. 3 days ago, the mining colony had gone quiet. Not the usual kind of quiet when communications broke. Downer storms hit the planet. This was different. This was the kind of silence that made experienced spacers nervous. "Sir, we're getting close to the colony," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the navigation station. His voice carried a tension that matched what everyone on the bridge was feeling. "Long-range scanners show the planet is still there, but something's wrong." Jake nodded and moved to the center of the bridge. He had been commanding ships for 15 years, and he had never lost a colony under his watch. Not completely. There were always survivors, always someone to tell the story of what went wrong. But the silence from Kepler 442b felt final in a way that made his stomach tight. "What kind of wrong?" Jake asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "The energy readings are all scrambled, Captain. It's like someone took the planet's normal energy signature and put it through a blender. I've never seen anything like it." Commander Lisa Hayes looked up from her science station. She was the best xenobiology expert in the fleet, and if anyone could make sense of strange readings, it would be her. "Captain, I'm seeing traces of quantum field manipulation, big-scale manipulation. Whatever happened down there, it used technology we don't have." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Humanity had been alone in space for 200 years, since they started colonizing other worlds. They had found ruins of old civilizations, sure, but nothing active. Nothing that could manipulate quantum fields on a planetary scale. "Take us in closer," Jake ordered. "But keep the shields up and weapons ready. If something did this to a whole colony, I don't want to find out what it might do to us." The warrior moved slowly toward Kepler 442b. As they got closer, the details became clearer and more terrifying. The planet looked normal from space, still the same brown and green world that 3,000 colonists had called home. But the cities were gone. Not destroyed like in a war, not burned like in an accident. They were just gone, leaving behind perfectly smooth craters where buildings used to stand. "My God," whispered Lisa as she studied the readings. "Captain, I think every structure on the planet has been taken apart at the molecular level. The energy readings suggest some kind of controlled disintegration process." "What about the people?" Jake asked, though he already feared the answer. "I'm not reading any life signs, sir. But that doesn't mean there are no survivors. The quantum interference is making scans difficult." Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "We're going down. Lisa, take a team and scan for any signs of what happened. Ben, you're with me. We'll search for survivors." The shuttle landed in what used to be New Houston, the colony's main city. Where 3 days ago there had been homes and shops and schools, now there was only empty ground covered with a fine gray dust. The dust sparkled strangely in the sunlight, and when Lisa ran tests on it, she found something that made her hands shake. "Captain, this dust is made of perfectly separated atoms: carbon, silicon, iron, calcium, all the elements that make up buildings and people. But they've been completely broken down to their basic parts." Jake kicked at the dust and tried not to think about what Lisa had just told him. Somewhere in this gray powder were the remains of 3,000 human beings, reduced to their component atoms by technology he could not even begin to understand. "Over here!" Ben's voice came from near what used to be the colony's research center. Jake and Lisa ran to where Ben was standing next to a crater that was different from the others. This one had something in it that had not been turned to dust. It was a small dome made of some kind of metal that seemed to bend light around itself. The dome was cracked and flickering, but it was still working. And from inside it came a sound that made Jake's heart race. Someone was crying. They found the opening to the dome and crawled inside. There, sitting in the middle of a space that should not have been big enough to hold him, was a boy who could not have been more than 10 years old. He was thin and dirty and scared, but he was alive. "Hey there," Jake said softly, trying not to frighten the child. "What's your name?" The boy looked up with eyes that had seen too much. "Danny Clark, are you here to save me?" "Yes, Danny. We're here to save you. Can you tell us what happened?" Danny's story came out in pieces mixed with tears and memories that no child should have to carry. His parents had been scientists working on something they called quantum field research. When the attack came, they had just enough time to activate their experimental shield and push Danny inside before they were turned to dust, like everyone else. They came from the sky, Danny said, his voice small and broken. Big ships that looked like they were made of crystal, and they had a voice that spoke in everyone's head at the same time. What did the voice say? Lisa asked gently. It said we were impure. It said humans were a mistake that needed to be cleaned up. It said they were the hegemony, and they had been cleaning up the galaxy for a very long time. Jake and Lisa exchanged looks. This was not random. This was not an accident or a natural disaster. This was murder on a scale that humanity had never seen before. Did they say anything else, Danny? The boy nodded and repeated words that would change the course of human history. They said they always leave one alive to carry the message. They said to tell other humans that we have two choices: submit to cleansing or face total erasure. Back on the Warrior, Jake sent the report to Earth Defense Command while Lisa worked to understand the quantum signatures left behind by whatever technology had destroyed the colony. Danny was in the medical bay, being treated for malnutrition and shock, but physically he was fine. The shield his parents had built had kept him safe from the disintegration effect. Captain, Lisa said from her lab, I think I understand how their technology works. It uses quantum field manipulation to break the bonds between atoms. It's incredibly advanced, centuries beyond anything we have. But here's the thing. The process leaves behind quantum signatures. Patterns in the energy field that might be traceable. Can we track them? Maybe. But more importantly, these signatures might be the key to understanding the technology. If we can figure out how it works, maybe we can find a way to defend against it. Jake looked out at the stars and thought about the message Danny had carried. Submit to cleansing or face total erasure. The hegemony had been cleaning up the galaxy for a very long time. How many worlds had they erased? How many species had been reduced to sparkling dust? How long do you think we have? He asked Lisa. Based on the quantum decay patterns, I'd say this attack happened exactly 3 days ago. If they're systematic about this, they'll probably give us time to get the message and make our choice. But not much time. Jake made another decision that would echo through history. We're not submitting to anything. Send word to every human world, every ship, every outpost. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what's coming. As the Warrior left Kepler 442b behind, carrying the only survivor of humanity's first encounter with the hegemony, Jake Morrison did not know that he was setting in motion events that would make humanity the most feared species in the galaxy. He only knew that someone had murdered 3,000 innocent people and threatened to do the same to every human in existence. That was something he could not allow to happen, no matter what it cost. Intelligence Officer Kate Williams sat in her dark office on Mars Central, surrounded by screens showing reports from across human space. It had been 2 weeks since Captain Morrison's discovery at Kepler 442b, and Kate was starting to see a pattern that made her blood run cold. The first report came from the mining station at Titan's Edge. Gone overnight. No distress signal, no wreckage, just empty space where a facility housing 200 miners used to orbit the gas giant. The only thing left behind was a small escape pod with a 12-year-old girl named Amy Ross inside, mumbling about crystal, ships and voices in her head. 3 days later, the agricultural world of Green Valley went silent. When the patrol ships arrived, they found the same scene Jake Morrison had described. Smooth craters where cities used to be, gray dust that sparkled in the sunlight, and one survivor. This time, it was an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Lee, found in a damaged emergency shelter his grandfather had built in the basement. Kate pulled up the next report, the research station at Proxima's Gate, home to 50 of humanity's best scientists. Destroyed 3 days ago. One survivor, a 9-year-old girl named Sally Wong, daughter of the station's head physicist. She had been protected by an experimental force field her parents activated before they died. Always children, Kate whispered to herself as she stared at the pattern on her screen. Always just one, always traumatized. The door to her office, opened and Admiral Ryan Cooper walked in. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes, and he looked like he had not slept in days. Behind him came Dr. Paul Newman, the head of the Terran Research Institute, carrying a tablet full of data that Kate knew would not contain good news. "Tell me you have something," Admiral Cooper said without sitting down. "Because what I'm hearing from the outer colonies is not making anyone sleep better at night." Kate stood up and activated the wall display. A map of human space appeared, with red markers showing every attack site. "Sir, we've had 7 confirmed attacks in the past 2 weeks. Each one follows the exact same pattern. Complete molecular disintegration of all structures and personnel, quantum field signatures indicating advanced technology, and exactly 1 child survivor." "The children," Dr. Newman said, adjusting his glasses. "They're not accidents. The hegemony is deliberately sparing them." To carry the message, Kate continued, each survivor tells the same story. Crystal ships, voices speaking directly into their minds, and the same ultimatum. Submit to cleansing or face total erasure. Admiral Cooper studied the map. The red markers seemed to form a rough line moving inward toward Earth and the core human worlds. "They're not random attacks, this is systematic. They're working their way toward our population centers." Kate nodded and changed the display to show population numbers. "Sir, if we add up all the people killed in these attacks, we're looking at over 50,000 dead. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is what the survivors are telling us about the hegemony's history." She brought up a news screen showing Danny Clark's testimony, recorded after he had recovered enough to speak clearly. The boy's words appeared as text while an audio recording played his small, frightened voice. "They told me they've been cleaning the galaxy for thousands of years. They said they've removed hundreds of species that were impure or evolutionary mistakes. They said humans are just the latest problem that needs to be solved." Dr. Newman set down his tablet and rubbed his forehead. "We've run analysis on the quantum signatures left at each attack site. The technology they're using is at least 300 years ahead of anything we have. Their energy manipulation capabilities are beyond our current understanding of physics." "Can we fight them?" Admiral Cooper asked. "With conventional weapons?" "No, sir. Their ships seem to exist partially outside normal space-time. Our missiles and energy weapons can't even target them properly, and their disintegration technology can unmake our ships in seconds." Kate pulled up another display showing their best intelligence estimates. "Based on the attack patterns and the survivors' descriptions, we think the hegemony operates with a fleet of at least 1,000 ships. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. They've been doing this for millennia, and they're very good at it." Admiral Cooper was quiet for a long moment, staring at the map of destroyed colonies. "What about evacuation? Can we get people out before the attacks?" "We've tried that, sir," Kate said. "The colony at Riverside Station received early warning when they detected quantum signatures 3 hours before the attack. They managed to evacuate about half their population. The hegemony waited for the evacuation ships to leave, then destroyed both the colony and the fleeing vessels. They left 1 survivor on each ship. 23 children total, all with the same message." "They're making sure we understand," Dr. Newman said quietly. "Running won't save us. Hiding won't save us. The only options are submission or death." Kate changed the display again, this time showing intercepted communications from the outer rim colonies. "Sir, panic is spreading faster than we can contain it. 3 colonies have already voted to surrender to the hegemony rather than face destruction. The government of New Australia is demanding that Earth negotiate with these aliens immediately." Admiral Cooper finally sat down, looking older than his 60 years. "What exactly would submission mean? Do we know what the hegemony wants?" "According to the survivors, cleansing means the complete removal of the human species from the galaxy. They don't want to rule us or enslave us. They want us gone, every last person, because they consider us genetically and culturally inferior." "Genocide," the Admiral said flatly. "Total genocide, sir. But here's what's really terrifying. The children have all described the same thing. The hegemony doesn't just kill species. They erase them. No ruins, no archaeological evidence, no trace that they ever existed." If you didn't know to look for the quantum signatures, you'd never know a civilization had been there at all. Dr. Newman leaned forward. Admiral, I need to tell you about the research we've been doing on those quantum signatures. My team has been analyzing the energy patterns left behind at each attack site, and we've made a discovery. What kind of discovery? The disintegration process isn't just random destruction. It's controlled, precise, and it leaves behind very specific quantum field patterns. These patterns are like fingerprints of the technology being used. If we can understand how the process works, we might be able to reverse engineer it. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. You want to build our own disintegration weapons? It might be our only chance, Dr. Newman said. If we can't defend against their technology, maybe we can learn to use it ourselves. Admiral Cooper was quiet for a long time, thinking. Outside the window, Kate could see the lights of New Geneva, home to 5 million people who had no idea how close they might be to extinction. How long would something like that take? The Admiral finally asked. With unlimited resources and access to more quantum signature data? Maybe a year, maybe 2. And how do we get more data? Dr. Newman looked uncomfortable. We would need to observe more attacks, study the technology in action, record everything while it happens. The terrible implication hung in the air between them. To build a weapon that could fight the hegemony, they would need to let more colonies die while they watched and took notes. Kate spoke first. Sir, there's something else. The pattern of attacks suggests the hegemony is giving us time to make our choice. Based on their current rate of advance, they'll reach the core worlds in about 6 months. If we're going to try Dr. Newman's approach, we need to start now. Admiral Cooper stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city, full of people who trusted him to protect them. Contact the Emergency Defense Council. Full classified briefing in 6 hours. And Kate, prepare a complete analysis of which colonies are most likely to be hit next. What are you thinking, sir? I'm thinking that sometimes the only way to save everyone is to sacrifice someone. And I'm thinking that's a choice no human being should ever have to make. As Kate watched the Admiral leave, she realized that humanity was about to face something worse than extinction. They were about to discover what they were willing to become in order to survive. The next report was already coming in. The farming colony at Miller's Creek had gone dark 2 hours ago. Kate closed her eyes and waited for the confirmation that would come in a few days. One more settlement turned to sparkling dust. One more traumatized child with the same terrible message. Submit or die. But maybe, just maybe, there was a third option that the hegemony had not considered. Maybe humans could learn to be monsters too. President Helen Parker stood at the head of the Emergency Council table, looking at the faces of the 10 people who would decide humanity's fate. 3 months had passed since the first attack on Kepler 442b, and the situation had become desperate. The hegemony was no longer targeting small colonies and research stations. They were preparing for something much bigger. General Chris Taylor activated the holographic display in the center of the room. 12 red markers appeared, each one marking a major human world. Madam President, our intelligence shows that the hegemony is positioning their fleet for a coordinated strike. New Texas, Haven's Rest, Aurora Prime, and 9 other core worlds, all at the same time. Helen felt her stomach drop. New Texas alone had 20 million people. Haven's Rest had 15 million. Aurora Prime had another 15 million. The other worlds combined held another 50 million souls. 100 million people, all marked for death. When? She asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know. Based on their movement patterns, we estimate 72 hours, maybe less. Dr. Susan Lee, who had taken over the quantum research project after Dr. Newman's heart attack, leaned forward. Madam President, we've made significant progress with the quantum disintegration technology. We understand the basic principles now, and we've built some prototype devices. But we need live data to make them work properly. What kind of live data? We need to observe the hegemony's technology in action against a defended position. We need to record every quantum signature, every energy pattern, every detail of how their weapons work. Without that data, our prototypes are just expensive paperweights. Helen looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. General Taylor with his weathered face and hard eyes. Dr. Lee with her nervous energy and brilliant mind. Admiral Cooper, who had barely spoken since the briefing began. Senator Bill Cross from the outer colonies, who kept checking his tablet for news from his home worlds. "How long do you need to observe an attack?" Helen asked. "At least 20 minutes of sustained combat. Maybe 30 to be sure." General Taylor cleared his throat. "Madam President, that's not possible. The hegemony's attacks last between 5 and 12 minutes. They arrive, destroy everything, leave one survivor, and disappear. There's no sustained combat because nothing we have can fight them for more than a few seconds. Unless," Dr. Lee said quietly, "we don't try to win the fight. If we focus on recording data instead of fighting back, if we use every sensor we have to study their technology while they're using it, we might get what we need." The room fell silent. Helen could hear the air conditioning humming and the distant sound of traffic from the streets of Geneva below. Everyone understood what Dr. Lee was suggesting, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Senator Cross finally spoke. "You're talking about letting them destroy one of our worlds while we watch and take notes. It's the only way," Dr. Lee said. "We can't fight them with the technology we have now. But if we can understand their technology, if we can build our own version of their weapons, then maybe we can stop them before they kill everyone." Admiral Cooper spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "Which world?" "Sir, if we're going to sacrifice one world to save the others, which one are we going to choose? New Texas with its 20 million people? Haven's Rest with its 15 million? How do we decide who lives and who dies?" Helen closed her eyes and tried to think. 3 months ago, she had been worried about trade agreements and colonial expansion. Now she was being asked to make a choice that would haunt humanity forever. "Aurora Prime," said General Taylor suddenly. "It has to be Aurora Prime." "Why?" Helen asked. "It's the most heavily defended of the target worlds. It has the best sensor, arrays, the strongest shields, the largest fleet garrison. If we're going to record an attack, that's where we'll get the most data. And it's positioned so that the other worlds won't see what we're doing." Dr. Lee nodded. "The sensor arrays on Aurora Prime are perfect for quantum field analysis. If we can modify them before the attack, we'll be able to record everything we need." Helen looked at each person around the table. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to authorize the sacrifice of 15 million people on Aurora Prime so that we can gather data to build weapons that might save the other worlds?" "Yes, Madam President," General Taylor said. "That's exactly what we're asking. And if the weapons don't work? If we sacrifice Aurora Prime and still can't stop the hegemony? Then we'll have tried everything we could," Dr. Lee said. "And the data we gather might help the next species that faces this threat." Helen stood up and walked to the window. Below, she could see people walking to work, children playing in parks, couples holding hands as they strolled through the city, normal people living normal lives, with no idea that their leaders were discussing genocide as a tactical option. "There has to be another way," she said. "There isn't," Admiral Cooper said quietly. "We've run every simulation, explored every option. We can't evacuate 100 million people without the hegemony noticing. We can't fight them with conventional weapons. We can't hide from them or run from them. The only choice is between letting them kill everyone or sacrificing some to save the rest." Senator Cross looked up from his tablet. "I've been in contact with the colonial governments. New Texas and Haven's Rest are both preparing for evacuation, but they know it's hopeless. The hegemony has already shown they'll destroy evacuation. Ships too." Helen turned back to the table. "What about the people on Aurora Prime? Do they get a choice in this?" "No," General Taylor said bluntly. "If we tell them what we're planning, someone will talk. The media will find out and the panic will spread to all the worlds. We can't risk that. So we lie to them. We tell them we're going to defend them, and then we let them die while we record their deaths for science." "Yes, Madam President, that's exactly what we do." Helen sat back down and looked at her hands. They were shaking slightly and she could not make them stop. "I need to hear this from each of you. I need to know that you all understand what we're talking about. She looked at General Taylor first. Chris? I vote yes. We sacrifice Aurora Prime to save the other worlds. It's a terrible choice, but it's the only choice we have. Susan? Dr. Lee was pale, but her voice was steady. Yes, we need the data. Without it, everyone dies. Ryan? Admiral Cooper was quiet for a long moment. Those 15 million people on Aurora Prime are going to die anyway. The hegemony is going to kill them whether we fight back or not. At least this way, their deaths might mean something. Helen went around the table. 7 votes for sacrifice, 3 votes against. The decision came down to her. She thought about her daughter, who lived on New Texas with her grandchildren. She thought about her brother, who commanded a mining station near Haven's Rest. She thought about the 15 million people on Aurora Prime who would go to sleep tonight thinking they were safe. God forgive me, she whispered. Then, louder, I vote yes. We sacrifice Aurora Prime. The room was silent for a moment. Then General Taylor spoke. I'll contact Colonel Amy Foster. She'll lead the mission to Aurora Prime. Officially, she's going. There to coordinate the defense. Unofficially, she'll be setting up the recording equipment and making sure we get the data we need. How many people will know the truth? Helen asked. As few as possible. Foster and her technical team, the sensor operators who modify the equipment, maybe a dozen people total. Dr. Lee gathered her papers. I'll need 48 hours to prepare the quantum field recorders. We'll only get one chance at this. As the meeting broke up, Helen remained seated at the table. Senator Cross approached her before leaving. Madam President, how do we live with ourselves after this? Helen looked up at him with tired eyes. We don't, Bill. We just make sure that Aurora Prime is the last world we ever have to sacrifice. We make sure their deaths buy us something worth having. After everyone left, Helen sat alone in the conference room, staring at the holographic display that still showed the 12 red markers. In 72 hours, one of those markers would disappear forever. 15 million people would be reduced to sparkling dust, and humanity would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. She picked up her secure phone and placed a call to Colonel Amy Foster. Amy, I have a mission for you. Pack your bags. You're going to Aurora Prime. On the other end of the line, Foster's voice was professional and calm. What kind of mission, Madam President? Helen closed her eyes. The kind that will save humanity and damn our souls. 6 months after the sacrifice of Aurora Prime, Captain Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, watching the Hegemony patrol fleet through the view screen. 47 crystal ships hung in space like deadly jewels, their hulls shifting and bending light in ways that hurt to look at directly. 6 months ago, the sight of even one Hegemony ship would have meant certain death for any human vessel. Today was different. Captain, all ships are in position, reported Lieutenant Nancy Clark from the communications station. The quantum disruptor. Arrays are charged and ready. Alex looked at the tactical display showing the positions of the human fleet. 12 ships, each one equipped with weapons that had been built from the quantum signatures recorded during Aurora Prime's destruction. Weapons powered by the deaths of 15 million innocent people. Weapons that Dr. Susan Lee had promised would change everything. Sir, the Hegemony ships are moving toward us, said Commander Mike Walsh from the tactical station. Same pattern as always. They're going to try to disintegrate us from long range. Let them try, Alex said quietly. All ships prepare to demonstrate what humans learned from Aurora Prime. The Hegemony ships began their attack exactly as expected. Beams of twisted light shot out from their crystal hulls, the same quantum disintegration technology that had turned entire worlds to dust. The beam struck the human ships and should have torn them apart atom by atom. Instead, the human ships absorbed the energy and converted it into power for their own weapons. Quantum shields holding perfectly, sir, Mike reported with amazement in his voice. The disintegration beams are actually making us stronger. Alex smiled grimly. Dr. Lee had done more than just copy the Hegemony's technology. She had improved it. Where the Hegemony could only destroy, humanity had learned to destroy selectively. Their quantum disruptors could target specific types of matter while leaving everything else untouched. Target their weapon systems only, Alex ordered. I want their ships disabled, not destroyed. Sir, all ships reporting ready to fire. Fire. The space between the two fleets filled with new kinds of light as humanity's quantum weapons reached out toward the hegemony ships. But instead of the wild destruction the aliens expected, the human weapons worked with surgical precision. They targeted only the crystal matrices that powered the alien ships, leaving the hulls intact and the crews unharmed. In 12 minutes, 47 hegemony warships were drifting helplessly in space, their crews alive but their weapons completely destroyed. The engagement that should have lasted less than 5 minutes and ended with human ships turned to dust had instead become humanity's first victory against their would-be executioners. Open a channel to the hegemony fleet, Alex ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the interior of a hegemony ship. The alien who appeared looked like a cross between an insect and a crystal formation, with multiple eyes that glowed with their own inner light. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in Alex's mind, just as the survivors had described. This is impossible. Your species lacks the intelligence to comprehend quantum field manipulation. You are evolutionary mistakes, marked for cleansing. We're fast learners, Alex replied. And we have a message for the hegemony. The cleansing stops now. You cannot stop the inevitable. We have cleansed thousands of species across millions of years. Your temporary victory changes nothing. Alex looked at the alien commander with cold eyes. Let me show you how much things have changed. He nodded to Mike, who activated a special recording device. The screen split to show footage from Aurora Prime's final moments. The hegemony commander watched as its own people's weapons tore apart human cities while human sensors recorded every detail. We watched you murder 15 million of our people, Alex said. We recorded every quantum signature, every energy pattern, every detail of your technology, and then we built something better. The alien's multiple eyes flickered with what might have been confusion or fear. Impossible. No species has ever adapted our cleansing technology. No species ever sacrificed their own people to learn it, Alex replied. But humans are different. We're willing to become monsters to stop bigger monsters. Alex switched the display to show the current tactical situation. The disabled hegemony ships drifted helplessly while human vessels surrounded them. But more importantly, the display showed something that made the alien commander's crystalline body start to glow with distress. Those are your support ships, Alex said, pointing to a group of smaller vessels that had been hanging back from the battle. We could have destroyed them along with your warships. Instead, we disabled your weapons and left your crews alive. Do you understand what this means? The alien was silent for a long moment. You show mercy to enemies. We show mercy because we choose to, not because we have to. Your people made the mistake of thinking mercy was weakness. But mercy is only meaningful when you have the power to destroy and choose not to use it. Alex activated another display, this one showing the quantum cascade device that Dr. Jennifer Walsh had developed during the months after Aurora Prime. The alien commander's reaction was immediate and terrified. Quantum cascade weaponry is forbidden by galactic law. No civilization is permitted to develop stellar destruction capability. Whose law? Alex asked. The law of the hegemony that's been committing genocide for thousands of years? We tested this weapon on an uninhabited system last week. Would you like to see the recording? The display showed a star system with 7 planets and billions of asteroids. Then it showed the same system after the cascade weapon had been fired. Empty space. Not just empty of planets and asteroids, but empty of the star itself. The weapon had erased matter from existence at the quantum level. This is what humans can do now, Alex said. This is what we learned from watching you murder our people. We can unmake entire star systems if we choose to. But we don't choose to because we're not you. The alien commander was shaking now, its crystalline body flickering with rapid color changes. What do you want? Surrender. Complete and unconditional surrender of all hegemony forces. An end to the cleansing of any species anywhere in the galaxy, and a promise that genocide will never happen again. The Hegemony Council will never agree to this. Alex smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then let me make this very clear. We're going to send you home with a message for your council. Tell them that humanity now possesses the power to erase them from existence. Tell them we can unmake their worlds, their fleets, even their home star if we choose to. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. But also tell them that we won't do it if they agree to our terms. Tell them that the species they tried to exterminate is now offering them something. They never offered anyone else a chance to live. The transmission ended, and Alex watched as the hegemony ships used their emergency systems to limp away from the battle. Soon, word of humanity's victory would spread across the galaxy. The species that had been marked for extinction had not only survived but had become the most powerful force in known space. "Sir," Nancy said from her station, "we're receiving surrender requests from hegemony forces in 12 different systems. It looks like word is spreading fast." "Good," Alex replied. "Mike, send the recordings of this engagement to every human ship and colony. Let everyone know that the war is over." But even as he said it, Alex knew that the real war was just beginning. Humanity had gained the power to protect the galaxy from genocide, but that same power made them the most feared species in existence. They had become what the hegemony used to be, the ultimate arbiters of life and death. The difference was that humans remembered where their power came from. Every time they used their quantum weapons, they were using technology powered by the recorded deaths of Aurora Prime's 15 million citizens. Every victory was built on the foundation of that terrible sacrifice. Dr. Susan Lee's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Dr. Lee from the research vessel Observer. The quantum field analysis from today's battle is complete. The hegemony technology is definitely inferior to what we've developed. We could destroy their entire civilization, if we wanted to. But we won't," Alex said firmly. "We're not them. We don't commit genocide even against genocidal aliens." "Understood, sir. But Captain, there's something you need to know. The quantum cascade weapon isn't just a bigger bomb. It draws power from quantum field manipulation on a stellar scale. If we ever use it on an inhabited system, the quantum signatures would be detectable across the entire galaxy." Alex understood the implication. If humanity ever used the cascade weapon against a populated world, every species in the galaxy would know that the protectors had become the destroyers. The species that had sworn to end genocide would have committed the ultimate genocide. Log. "This in the permanent record," Alex said. "Humanity's quantum cascade weapons are to be used only as a deterrent. Any use against inhabited systems requires unanimous approval from the Colonial Council and a direct order from the President." As the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the journey home, Alex looked out at the stars and wondered what humanity had become. 5 years after the hegemony surrender, Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the memorial chamber on what used to be Aurora Prime. The planet had been rebuilt, but not as a normal colony. Instead, it served as humanity's reminder of what they had done to gain their power. In the center of the chamber, a massive quantum display showed the faces of every person who had died during the original attack. 15 million faces, cycling slowly through the air, maintained by the same quantum technology that had made humanity's victory possible. President Helen Parker, now in her final year of office, stood beside Jake as they watched the memorial. She looked older than her years, her hair completely gray and her face marked by the weight of decisions no human should have to make. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. Jake was quiet for a moment, watching the faces float past. There was Maria Santos, who had been a teacher at the colony school. There was Robert Kim, who had run the local market. There was little Emma Davis, who had been only 6 years old when the attack came. "Every day," he said finally. "But I regret what would have happened if we hadn't done it even more." The Galactic Accords had been signed 3 years ago in this very chamber. Every major species in the galaxy had agreed to the simple treaty that humanity had written. No systematic extermination of any species would be tolerated. Any civilization that attempted genocide would face humanity's quantum arsenal. The treaty was short, clear, and backed by power that no one dared to challenge. The door to the chamber opened and Dr. Susan Lee walked in, now Director of Galactic Peace Enforcement. She carried a tablet containing the weekly reports from across human space. Behind her came Danny Clark, no longer the frightened 10-year-old boy who had been found in a quantum shelter. At 15, Danny had become humanity's most effective diplomat, not because he was skilled at negotiation, but because when he spoke about the price of peace, every alien species listened. Admiral Morrison, Madam President, Dr. Lee said with a slight bow. The quarterly reports are ready for your review. Jake took the tablet and scrolled through the data. 17 potential conflicts resolved through diplomatic intervention. 3 species that had been planning military expansion against their neighbors had been convinced to pursue peaceful alternatives after visits from human peacekeeping vessels. 2 attempted genocides had been stopped before they began when the aggressors received simple messages showing humanity's quantum cascade capabilities. The Zephyrian Empire tried to sterilize the Qatari homeworld last week, Dr. Lee reported. A single human ship arrived in their system and broadcast footage of our weapons test. The Zephyrians withdrew their fleet within 6 hours. Any casualties? President Parker asked. None. The Zephyrians didn't even fire a shot once they understood what they were facing. Danny stepped forward, his young face serious beyond his years. Madam President, I've been receiving requests from the Outer Rim territories. 3 new species have asked for protection under the Accords. They're being threatened by the hegemony remnants. Jake looked up from the tablet. Even though the main hegemony forces had surrendered, scattered groups still operated in the far reaches of the galaxy. They were too proud to accept that their 1,000-year reign of terror was over, and they continued to attack weaker species whenever they thought they could get away with it. Where? Jake asked. The Tau Ceti region. A species called the Malari. They're peaceful, technologically advanced, but they have no military. A hegemony splinter group has been systematically destroying their colonies. President Parker sighed. Send a peacekeeping force, make it clear to the hegemony remnants that the Accords apply to everyone, everywhere. As they spoke, the quantum memorial continued its slow cycle of faces. Jake noticed that the display was showing Sarah Mitchell, now a young woman who had been studying quantum physics when Aurora Prime was destroyed. Her research had contributed to the development of the weapons that now kept the galaxy safe. Danny, President Parker said, I need you to do something for me. Next month, the Galactic Council is meeting to discuss expanding the Accords. I want you to speak to them about what happened here. Danny nodded solemnly. What do you want me to tell them? Tell them the truth. Tell them what it cost us to become powerful enough to protect them. Tell them that peace isn't free, and someone always has to pay the price. Dr. Lee activated a wall display showing the current state of the galaxy. Green markers showed systems under human protection. Blue markers showed species that had voluntarily joined the Accords. Red markers showed the few remaining trouble spots where conflicts were still brewing. Admiral, there's something else, Dr. Lee said. We've detected quantum cascade signatures in the Andromeda spiral. Someone there has developed stellar destruction capability. Jake felt his blood run cold. The quantum cascade weapon had been humanity's ultimate deterrent because they were the only ones who possessed it. If another species had developed similar technology, the balance of power could shift dramatically. How advanced is their technology? Based on the quantum signatures, it's about 50 years behind ours. Crude, but functional. They can destroy stars, but they can't do it selectively like we can. President Parker walked over to the memorial display and placed her hand on the quantum field. The faces continued to cycle past her fingers, each one a reminder of the price humanity had paid for peace. Contact Captain Rodriguez, she said. Have him take a fleet to Andromeda, not to fight, but to talk. If someone else has cascade weapons, we need to make sure they understand the responsibility that comes with that power. Jake nodded. In the 5 years since humanity had gained dominance over the galaxy, they had never used the cascade weapon on an inhabited system. The threat was enough. But the knowledge that their power came from the sacrifice of their own people kept them from becoming the monsters they had replaced. Dr. Lee, what's the status of the children? President Parker asked. All 47 survivors from the various attacks are doing well. 23 have chosen to work in diplomatic roles. 15 are studying quantum physics to help maintain our technology. The others are living normal lives, but they all serve as witnesses when needed. Jake remembered each of the children who had been left behind by the hegemony's attacks. They had been traumatized witnesses to genocide, but they had become something more important. They were living proof of what happened when mercy was abandoned, and they made sure that humanity never forgot the cost of survival. Danny walked over to join the president at the memorial display. "Madam President, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my parents hadn't built that shield. If I had died with everyone else on Kepler 442b. Someone else would have carried the message," she replied. "The hegemony made sure there were always survivors to spread fear, but they never expected those survivors to become the conscience of the galaxy." The memorial chamber fell quiet, except for the soft hum of the quantum field generators. Outside, the rebuilt city of Aurora Prime bustled with activity. Humans, aliens, and artificial intelligences worked together in laboratories and schools and markets, all protected by humanity's promise that genocide would never happen again. But in this chamber, surrounded by the faces of the dead, the leaders of humanity remembered the truth that kept them human despite their godlike power. Every weapon they built, every threat they made, every peace they enforced was powered by the quantum echoes of 15 million innocent people who had died so that others might live. President Parker turned to leave, but stopped at the chamber's exit. Above the door, carved in simple letters, was humanity's promise to the galaxy. Here died 15 million humans so that genocide would die with them. Their sacrifice powers our mercy. Never again means never again. As they walked out into the afternoon sun of Aurora Prime, Jake realized that humanity had achieved something unique in galactic history. They had become the most feared species in existence, not because they were cruel, but because they were willing to be cruel to themselves to protect others. They had learned to be monsters so that no one else would have to be. The quantum memorial continued its endless cycle behind them, ensuring that the galaxy would never forget what humanity had done to their enemies and to themselves, to purchase peace with the coin of their own people's lives.